right now, I mean, literally right now, there is a CFO sitting in some boardroom looking at a quarterly spreadsheet and just completely patting themselves on the back for saving $1 million by pausing their off-season marketing budget.
Oh, yeah. Happens every day.
Right. But what they don't realize is that their little attempt to save $1 million, well, probably just cost the company nearly $2 million.
At least, yeah.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are talking about the lifeblood of how a business actually grows. Specifically, we're going to analyze branding for long-term growth and, why the default financial logic used in most corporate boardrooms is just quietly destroying long-term brand equity.
It's a huge problem, and I'm really glad we're getting into this.
Me too. Okay, let's unpack this. Your mission for this deep dive, for you listening, is to help us figure out the true mechanics of long-term brand growth. We're looking at this really brilliant piece of strategy titled Marketing, a Seasonal Switch, or a Strategic Constant.
Yeah, and it incorporates some pretty heavily quantified research from BCG, which is great.
Exactly. We are going to explore why treating a marketing budget like a water tap, turning it on and off based on the season, is just a fundamental miscalculation.
It really is. And I'd go so far as to say it is arguably the most common strategic trap in modern business.
Really, the most common.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to understand why it traps so many smart executive teams, we have to look at the appeal of the logic. The analysis points out that this budgeting discussion, it just repeats itself perpetually.
Like clockwork.
Right. It's driven by the rhythm of standard business cycles. The prevailing boardroom logic dictates that peak demand seasons, well, they get the aggressive budgets.
Makes sense on paper.
Right. And then lean months trigger immediate pauses in discretionary spending. So the marketing budget literally functions as a faucet.
The business turns it on when consumer demand is, visible and measurable.
Yep. And shuts it off when market uncertainty rises or when the product enters its natural off-season. What's fascinating here is how incredibly logical this feels to decision makers, even though it's a complete trap.
I mean, the appeal is obvious, right? Because it feels like responsible capital management. Like, if a company is selling, enterprise payroll software, and they know procurement departments typically don't sign new vendor contracts in December.
They're all on vacation.
Exactly. So the CFO's instinct is to just cut the December ad spend to zero. But reading through this analysis, a completely different operational model comes to mind. Treating marketing like a faucet ignores the underlying machinery of the market.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
It's much closer to, managing a heavy manufacturing plant. Like, if you shut down an entire factory assembly line just because orders are temporarily slow, you aren't just saving on your electricity bill.
No, not at all. Because when you inevitably try to turn that factory back on, you have to recalibrate the machinery.
Right, you have to retrain the floor staff.
You have to overcome all that cold start friction. Shutting down completely is wildly inefficient compared to just, running the assembly line at a low, continuous idle.
Right. But I need to push back on this from a strict, operational reality standpoint, because let's look at the cash flow. If I am running a mid-cap company and we hit a severe Q3 slump, my executive team isn't thinking about the theoretical momentum of our marketing machinery.
No, they're looking at the cash reserves required to make payroll next Friday.
Exactly. So how does a CMO justify keeping the marketing factory idling when the immediate cash flow simply isn't there to support it?
Well, so that is a friction point where theory meets reality. And the distinction we have to make here is between operational survival and strategic planning.
Okay.
Because if a company literally has to cut its top-of-funnel marketing just to make Friday's payroll, the business is facing a structural cash flow crisis, right? It's not a marketing optimization problem anymore.
Yeah, that's a much bigger fire to put out.
Exactly. In a pure survival scenario, you just do what you must to keep the lights on. However, the BCG research in this analysis, they're targeting companies that do have the capital but are choosing to cut the budget purely to optimize quarterly margins.
I see.
Yeah, they are treating a strategic growth engine as a discretionary expense. And assuming the business is, operationally healthy, electing to cut that spending is just a massive false economy.
Which brings us to the actual quantified penalty of that false economy. So transitioning from the perceived safety of those budget cuts, we really need to examine the hidden financial damage they cause.
And it is substantial.
Yeah. This is where analyzing branding for long-term growth completely separates itself from, short-term performance marketing. The source material brings in research from BCG's work. It's called Building lasting brand equity in the age of AI.
Yes, great paper.
And the data here just completely rewrites how we should view these budget pauses.
The numbers are, frankly, sobering for anyone responsible for market share. So the BCG data reveals that for every single dollar a company saves through near-term brand cuts, it requires nearly $1.92 to regain that lost market share later.
Wait, almost $2.
$1.92, yep.
So a company cuts its budget to save $1, high-fives the finance team for, optimizing the quarter, and inadvertently creates a future debt of almost $2 just to get back to the exact market position they previously held.
That is exactly what happens.
We need to drill down into the mechanics of this. How does a $1 cut mutate into a nearly $2 penalty? Like, where is that money going?
Well, the $1.92 penalty is basically a compound tax made up of 3 distinct mechanical failures that happen when a brand goes dark.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is algorithmic. I mean, modern advertising platforms on Google, Meta, or programmatic networks, they rely on continuous machine learning.
Right.
So when you pause a campaign, you don't just pause the spend, you actively starve the algorithm of conversion data.
Oh, so it stops learning.
Worse, it forgets. When you turn the tap back on, months later, the algorithm has lost its optimization history. So you are effectively paying a premium, a sort of learning phase tax, to retrain the platform's models to find your buyers all over again.
Wow. So you are paying a literal inefficiency penalty to the ad networks just to get your data models back up to speed.
Precisely. And then the second failure is the share of voice penalty. The advertising market is, at its core, an auction.
Right. Highest bidder wins.
Yeah. So when you pull your dollars out of the market during the off-season, you artificially lower the cost of inventory for your competitors.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they swoop in, scoop up that cheaper media, and gain a disproportionate share of voice.
Because you literally just handed it to them.
Basically. So when you re-enter the auction during peak season, you are now fighting against competitors who have deeply entrenched themselves, and you're bidding up the cost of media during the absolute most expensive time of the year.
That is brutal.
Yeah.
You literally funded your competitor's cheap acquisition strategy by leaving the auction, and now you have to shout over them when the inventory is at its most expensive.
Exactly. And the third, and perhaps most damaging component of the $1.92 penalty is cognitive decay.
Cognitive decay.
Yeah. Consumers are not robots just waiting in sleep mode until they need to make a purchase.
Yeah, they're living their lives.
Exactly. They are continuously observing their environment, forming opinions, and deciding who represents the safest choice long before a peak buying season ever arrives.
Right.
By the time a procurement manager or just a regular consumer is actively researching a solution, the decision is often already heavily biased toward the brands they are familiar with.
That makes total sense.
So when a brand disappears during the off-season, it doesn't just pause in the consumer's mind, it actively fades.
The silent fades. I mean, the brain is literally pruning the synaptic connections associated with that brand because the information is no longer being reinforced.
Yes.
It's just a biological process of forgetting. This means the very act of trying to maximize quarterly savings is quietly eroding the long-term structural value of the business.
Precisely.
And the real danger is that this decay is completely invisible on a standard P&L statement. I mean, there is no line item for a consumer memory decay.
Right, because the financial systems we rely on, they're designed exclusively to track transactions, not trust.
But trust is the mandatory precursor to the transaction.
Exactly. The $1.92 penalty basically proves that rebuilding lost salience, re-educating a completely cold market, it costs significantly more than just maintaining a continuous presence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if going silent triggers this massive, multi-layered financial penalty, we have to look at the inverse, right? What exactly is happening structurally when a brand does maintain consistent visibility?
That's the million-dollar question.
Looking at the mechanics, it functions remarkably like capital allocation and compound interest.
Oh, the compounding effect is the perfect lens for this.
Right, because in wealth management, you don't build a massive portfolio by ignoring the market for 11 months and then, throwing a lump sum into a stock the day before you retire.
That would be a terrible idea.
It'd be awful. You rely on the compounding value of continuous calculated investments over time. The existing capital generates returns, which generate further returns. So in this framework, the marketing you did last month makes the marketing you do today inherently more effective.
The source material actually details the specific cognitive layers of how this compounding works for a brand. It breaks it down into three distinct tiers.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
First, continuous presence builds a layer of clarity.
Meaning you are actively reducing the cognitive load for the buyer. When they encounter your brand, their brain doesn't have to burn calories trying to figure out what category you belong to or what problem you solve.
Yes, exactly. Clarity removes friction. And then the second compounding layer is credibility.
Credibility.
Right. In high consideration purchases, whether that's like a huge enterprise SaaS deployment or a consumer buying a new vehicle, the primary driver of the decision is often just risk mitigation.
Nobody wants to get fired for buying the wrong software.
Exactly. Consistent presence signals stability and leadership. It tells the market, hey, we are a permanent fixture here.
Which minimizes the perceived risk. The buyer inherently believes you will actually be around to support the product next year just because they keep seeing you.
Spot on. And the final layer of the compound effect is memory.
Building the associative networks in the buyer's mind so that when a specific trigger event happens, say, their current software crashes or their car breaks down, your brand is the immediate, automatic default option that surfaces.
Right. And when a business steadily layers clarity, credibility, and memory over time, that consistency generates what the industry terms mental availability.
Mental availability.
Yeah, this is the core infrastructure of long-term brand equity. And the pivotal takeaway from the BCG analysis is that no amount of reactive, last-minute, peak season spending can manufacture this deep-rooted mental availability.
So you can't just buy it when you need it.
You cannot buy 12 months of credibility in a 3-week promotional blitz. It just doesn't work.
I mean, you can certainly buy attention with a last-minute burst. A company can drop millions on a massive homepage takeover or, a premium sponsorship and force the market to look at them for a day.
True. But attention is fleeting, it's transactional, mental availability is structural.
Oh, thanks.
Attention is the event, but mental availability is the architecture. If a brand hasn't built that underlying architecture during the quiet periods, their incredibly expensive peak season attention is just going to bounce right off the consumer.
They'll see the ad, but without the pre-existing clarity and credibility, they just won't internalize the message.
Exactly.
Okay, but I can hear the CFO sweating through the speakers again.
Oh, I'm sure they are.
Because if the argument is that pausing the budget is a strategic disaster that costs 1.92 for every dollar saved, are we arguing for maximum velocity all year long?
Absolutely not.
Because, does a company selling winter apparel need to maintain a multi-million-dollar ad spend in the middle of July? If the mandate is uniform, flatline spending regardless of market conditions, businesses will bankrupt themselves trying to finance this theoretical mental availability.
Yeah, and that is the most dangerous misinterpretation of the data. The analysis is really emphatic on this point. Consistency does not mean sameness.
Okay, consistency does not mean sameness.
Right. Advocating for a strategic constant is absolutely not an argument for uniform flatline spending across the entire fiscal year. Instead, the shape of the marketing must constantly evolve.
The shape of the strategy rather than just the volume of the spend.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the strategy must act like a chameleon.
A chameleon.
Yeah, the chameleon never stops being present in its environment, but it continuously adapts its colors to match the immediate surroundings.
That makes total sense.
Right. A sophisticated brand has to do the exact same thing with its capital allocation, its messaging, and its channel mix.
So what are the operational mechanics of that shape-shifting? How does a brand execute the chameleon strategy across a long business cycle without just totally blowing the budget?
Well, the source outlines a highly evolved 3-tiered approach to pacing the strategy. During the quieter periods, the lean months, the objective is strictly brand building.
Okay.
You are not measuring direct response or cost per acquisition. You are measuring reach, emotional resonance, and brand lift. The messaging is focused on establishing those layers of clarity and credibility we just discussed.
So you are maintaining the factory idle. You aren't aggressively pushing a buy now message because the intent just isn't there, but you are ensuring the market understands your core value proposition.
Exactly. Then as the macro environment shifts and the business enters peak seasons, the shape of the strategy changes. The focus shifts from broad brand building to demand capture.
Okay, so a gear shift.
A huge gear shift.
Yeah.
The messaging becomes highly rational, the calls to action become very direct, and the metrics shift to conversion rates and pipeline velocity.
Because the buyer now has the intent, and you are capturing the demand that you fostered during the lean months.
You got it. And finally, the third tier involves deploying sharper spikes within that demand capture phase.
What's a spike?
This is when buyer intent is at its absolute statistical peak. So maybe it's the final weeks of a B2B procurement cycle or, a major consumer holiday like Black Friday. This is where you unleash heavy tactical spend to maximize conversion.
So the campaigns themselves are entirely different.
Completely different.
The media channels shift from broad awareness platforms to highly targeted search and conversion networks. The CFO is still authorizing heavier spend during peak times.
Yes.
The fundamental shift is simply the commitment to never dropping to zero. You modulate the volume, but you never pull the plug on the machinery.
That is the perfect summary.
But okay, we have to address the technological reality of modern marketing. How does a brand manage the immense data and execution requirements of constantly shifting this message shape across millions of consumers?
Well, this naturally brings us to artificial intelligence.
Of course it does, because AI is fundamentally altering how we optimize campaigns. So, with the sheer precision of modern algorithms, couldn't a brand theoretically bypass the slow, expensive process of brand building?
That's the pitch.
Right. If an AI model can identify the exact microsecond a buyer is ready to convert, can't we just snipe the high-intent buyers with a last-minute burst and ignore the off-season entirely?
It is a very compelling pitch, and it is exactly what many technology vendors are promising right now.
Just let the algorithm do the work.
Exactly. The idea that AI can somehow replace the need for long-term brand equity. However, the analysis firmly dismantles this concept.
It does.
Yeah. Look, AI is a staggering leap forward in capability. It has revolutionized how brands process data, personalize creative assets at scale, and optimize bidding strategies in real time.
It drives unprecedented efficiency.
Right, the efficiency is undeniable.
It is.
Yeah.
But AI changes the execution of the strategy, not the fundamental principles of human psychology.
It all returns to a reality that algorithms simply cannot overwrite. Trust is built over time, not over fiscal quarters.
Right.
Technology, regardless of its processing power, can only accelerate impact if there is an already existing consistent brand narrative for it to amplify.
Right, because if an algorithm perfectly identifies a B2B buyer who is, authorized to spend $100,000 today and perfectly delivers your ad to their screen.
It doesn't matter if they don't know you.
Exactly. If that buyer has zero mental availability for your brand, the algorithm's efficiency is entirely wasted. They are going to ignore the ad and click on the competitor they recognize.
AI is the ultimate amplifier. But if you multiply zero mental availability by the most advanced neural network in the world, the mathematical result is still zero.
Wow. Yeah, 0 times anything is 0.
AI makes demand capture ruthlessly efficient, but it cannot synthesize human trust out of thin air. You still have to do the quiet structural work of building clarity and credibility during the off-season.
So the technology ensures the right person sees the message at the exact right time. But the long-term brand building is what ensures they actually care once they see it.
Exactly. And this highlights why treating marketing as a strategic constant is more critical now than it was, say, 10 years ago.
Really? Why now?
Because AI is making the execution layer so fast and the digital environment so crowded, tactical efficiency is becoming commoditized.
Well, because everyone has it.
Right. Everyone has access to the same optimization tools. The only sustainable differentiator left for a business is that deep compounded trust. The brands that master this understand that they aren't just trying to win an individual quarterly cycle, they are systematically accumulating trust year after year.
So what does this all mean for you, whether you are sitting in a corporate boardroom analyzing a multi-million-dollar budget, or, you're an entrepreneur trying to scale a new venture? The faucet fallacy just has to be abandoned. The most sophisticated executive teams are no longer asking, should we market this quarter? The question of if is no longer on the table. They're asking, how should we shape our presence in this specific moment?
Right. Are we in brand building mode, demand capture mode, or spike mode?
Exactly.
The entire boardroom paradigm has to shift away from asking about the immediate cost of maintaining a presence. The BCG data forces executives to ask a much more dangerous question. What is the long-term cost of disappearing?
Wow.
Because in a hyper-competitive algorithmic market, silence is never a neutral position. It is a massive strategic vulnerability.
Silence is a debt. When you turn the tap off, you are borrowing against your future market share, and you are going to pay a massive premium to buy it back.
$1.92 for every dollar, to be exact.
Which is just staggering.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the mechanics of long-term growth, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've analyzed this heavily from the perspective of capital allocation and boardroom strategy, but flip the dynamic for a second. Think about your own behavior as a consumer.
Oh, this is a great exercise.
Right. Think about your absolute favorite brand right now. Maybe it's an enterprise software platform you champion at work, or a high-end piece of hardware you plan to buy next year.
A brand that has successfully established deep mental availability in your mind.
Exactly that brand. If the data shows that buyers are continuously forming opinions during a brand's off months, consider what subtle signals your favorite brand is sending you right now while you're absolutely not in the market to buy from them.
Yep.
Pay attention to your media environment this week. The next time you see a quiet, unassuming piece of content for a product you know you won't need for another 6 months, ask yourself, is that company just wasting their capital? Or are they quietly, deliberately planting a seed of trust?
They're planting seeds.
Are they adding just one more microscopic layer of clarity and credibility that you won't even realize is influencing your behavior until the day you finally sign that contract or step up to the checkout counter? The underlying mechanics of brand growth might seem abstract on a balance sheet, but once you understand the mathematical penalty of going dark, the power of continuous presence becomes impossible to ignore.